One is for the old heads who grew up in the golden age of the silver screen. Sup everybody, Ambro here, and today we're chatting about a game that kind of came out of nowhere a few years ago, and it's getting a follow-up 2 years later. But we're here to talk about the November 2nd, 2023 release of RoboCop Rogue City. It's not often you see a movie licensed gem like this end up as good as a game as it is, and yet developer Teyon absolutely nailed it. You play as the RoboCop as you hit the crime-ridden streets in this fictional recreation of the future city of Detroit. You play as Alex Murphy, aka the RoboCop, and he's voiced by the man himself, Peter Weller, who played the RoboCop in the original 1987 film, which is so awesome.
If you do not come quietly, I will not need any. You can go, but remember, revenge results from weakness. Forgiveness requires strength.
RoboCop Rogue City currently goes for $49.99 US, which is great, frankly, as it's deserving of every penny. Before we get started, please like, subscribe, and ring that notification bell to get allegedly instant notifications on when the next video drops. Just so you guys know, everything that you're seeing here was captured on my PC, the specs of which I will put in the description down below. To start off, let me give you a bit of a backstory here to set the stage. While I'm sure a bunch of fellow geriatrics like myself saw RoboCop and immediately recognized him, there are so many people who don't know this 80s action buddy cop film hero. Narratively speaking, RoboCop Rogue City takes place between RoboCop 2 and RoboCop 3. See things like Nuke introduced after the first movie. Just so you know, RoboCop 2 is fine, and don't see RoboCop 3. Just don't. Let's go over the synopsis of the original movie so that newcomers aren't completely lost. If you already know the general plot and setting of RoboCop, feel free to skip to here. Now, the original 1987 film RoboCop was inspired by the downfall of Detroit in the 80s, which is a really poignant time during United States history, while RoboCop 1 never specifies its exact date, as it just says in a near future crime-ridden Detroit. Now, for context, for many years, the real Detroit was a huge company town, and companies like GM employed hundreds of thousands of people, and for a time, it was thriving and prosperous as you could hope. However, in the 80s, due to the decline of the auto industry and the rise of suburbanization, as well as the rise of competition, cars became harder and harder to sell. Simultaneously, the city of Detroit did not diversify itself enough in terms of jobs available for its residents. As a result, when everything started to crash, the population of Detroit took a massive hit and dropped by hundreds of thousands, as many people moved away and many of the wealthier residents left with their money to the suburbs. While this history is very real, keep in mind that the setting in the game is a fictional take on this setting, and it is simply inspired by real events. The movie actually takes place in an unspecified future timeline, as mentioned before, and you will be playing as the RoboCop Alex Murphy. Alex actually didn't start out as the RoboCop, he actually started as a piece of Swiss cheese. While his early career was filled with gaps and holes, soon RoboCop was born. The movie, and by extension the game, does not shy away from the concepts of humanity and autonomy. This is in fact a recurring theme throughout the movie as well as the game. Is the RoboCop human or machine? Does he deserve rights or is he a tool? However, a company by the name of Omni Consumer Products, or as it's often referred to by its acronym OCP, is a fictional megacorporation that has different plans in mind for the city of Detroit. In fact, OCP is the reason RoboCop exists, as they are the ones who created and deployed him originally. However, conflicting motives between OCP and RoboCop's original programming ultimately clash and lead to the remaining events of the movie. This is an incredibly crude description of the setting and backstory for the game, but hopefully it will serve its purpose as we move on in the video. For Rogue City, let's make this clear. You do not have to have seen the movies to play this game, but it definitely helps that some of the supporting characters from the films have found their way into the game. The supporting actors do not reprise their roles, unlike Peter Weller, but the sound alikes are good enough for game purposes. The game has a fairly linear story told through short cutscenes, and this is where the game starts to show its AA roots. While the main cutscenes in the game are motion captured, the facial animations are not. The side missions and most of the disposition also are not motion captured or anything, so the animation is really stilted. The game almost feels like a representation of the movie itself. It was always this campy action hero movie with cringy at times dialogue, but always fun action, and that's exactly what you get here in the best way possible. The story isn't going to blow you away, but it's serviceable enough to push you forward to figure out what's going on as you play detective, jury, and executioner. The narrative itself isn't anything special, however, the world that Teyon has crafted here is. Graphically speaking, the game is stunning. It's using a version of Unreal Engine 5, and it's using a lot of its key features, including Lumen and Nanite, to great effect. The graphics, the sound, it's all incredible set dressing, but shooting isn't the entire game. The game is actually broken up into approximately 30 missions where you will go in and out of the police station, which acts as the hub where you will debrief after missions throughout the game. With that said, let's move on to the next section here and talk about the gameplay and game design itself, because the game can correctly utilize a famous movie IP, but only if the game is fun to play. And luckily the gameplay here is fantastic and the main draw. This is the closest you will ever feel in a video game to being Darth Vader in that scene from Rogue One. This is what id Tech meant when they said stand and fight when talking about Doom the Dark Ages. I'm joking, don't come after me. You are a literal walking tank. There is a sprint function, but you're still a robot in the minds of the producers of the 80s. So as you walk stilted, you make these booming thuds as you stomp around. There's even a setting in the game to turn down the volume of his steps because they are so prominent. I personally didn't use this, I just think it's funny it's there. In fact, from a gameplay perspective, I actually think it's a really neat idea because it's a constant reminder of the hulking presence of who you are. As you've already seen in the gameplay on screen and throughout this video, the game is a pure power fantasy. Even in the beginning of the game, when you have no progression yet, you feel like a total badass. You walk up to enemies, grab them, and launch their ragdoll bodies across the battlefield. You activate your RoboVision to see your enemies and take them out with your service pistol, that you can upgrade by the way, methodically and without panic. You literally feel like a badass action hero as you mow down the helpless criminal scum of Detroit as they attempt to skirt the law. It's frankly such a perfect situation for a video game, and I love it. It's good fun. So yes, the game is obviously a first-person shooter, but what may surprise you is the game's pacing and how that's handled. You see, between all of the shooting and action, there are sections where you can freely explore the open areas of the game, talk to NPCs, collect pickups, do side missions, and find secrets. On top of that, there are dialogue choices in Rogue City that affect NPCs' feelings toward you, and even some choices that affect the outcome of some missions, including the main quest line, which does have up to 3 endings. I won't spoil any of them here, just know that they exist. I wouldn't say that these dialogue sections are the lower points of the game, but it's clearly not where a majority of the budget went. Otherwise, these interactions wouldn't feel as stale as they do. The voice acting is fine, but the rough animations here definitely take you out of the experience for a second until you see your robotic knight in shining armor again and that beautiful jawline. Sorry, I'm easily distracted. Exploring open areas, doing side quests, and finding secrets are all completely optional. If you just want to rush the primary objectives and do the story, you can absolutely do that too and have a great time. However, I think by doing so, you would miss out on some of the really fun parts of the game, which is to play as RoboCop. You get to go around and help the civilians who have run into really hard times. You help someone find their cat in a building fire, and you serve the public trust. You issue a ticket to a car that's parked next to a hydrant. You make friends with one of the locals and have them keep their ear to the ground, and the other less shooty parts of law enforcement. While these activities aren't always the most stimulating, you do earn extra XP, which is needed if you're going to keep your RoboCop fitted with the upgrades from the progression system. Now, the game gives you levels from XP, but you also get skill points when you complete certain missions at planned parts of the campaign, and this model of progression keeps everything running smoothly. Now, what I really love about RoboCop Rogue City is how it's focused on being the RoboCop himself. The game offers skill points and progressions, but only in ways that make sense in context to the RoboCop. Let me give you an example. For one thing, you have your service pistol, which is your default weapon. You are able to upgrade it as you progress through the game. You have unlimited ammo, so you will never run out, and you can always pull it out in a fight. The gun does well for the first few missions of the game, but after that, it becomes crucial to pick up weapons off the ground that enemies drop as you start fighting harder and harder enemies. Every gun has excellent feedback and feels really punchy. The game is also incredibly gory, so if you are sensitive to that, there is a setting to reduce it, but the pickups off the ground are going to keep you alive. While you can't upgrade the pickup weapons, they do help you in more specific scenarios than the service pistol would. Obviously, if you're going into an enclosed close quarter combat space, combat shotguns are going to help you out here. But if you're fighting a lot of really long range fights, you'd rather have an AK or a sniper rifle to fight with. Another aspect of RoboCop's abilities and how it ties to the progression system is, well, it's clear from looking at him that he's not going to be super nimble and run around like a ninja, so his abilities that you can unlock are centered around that walking tank build that he has. You can get a front shield that reduces damage, you can unlock a flash that blinds all enemies in front of you, which is really great for when you breach doors and catch enemies by surprise. And then you have this forward dash that both knocks down enemies and lets you get close to them so you can grab them and toss them like the rock you're skipping across the pond. Instead of giving you access to more abilities, you simply continue to improve these core abilities throughout the entirety of the game's 12 to 20 hour campaign, depending on how much side content you do.
As far as the choices you make along the way the way reconciles them is in classic Obsidian fashion, by flashing you these end cards at the end of your playthrough that tell you what was the outcome of the decisions you've made, both small and large. If you've never played an Obsidian RPG like The Outer Worlds or Fallout Fallout New Vegas. This is basically straight out of their book, and it's a neat way to give you that sense of closure. I've had some really unexpected and funny cards that made me laugh out loud, as well as satisfying outcomes for the NPCs I favorite and took care of, except for Pickles.
I find this a really great length for games today, as many gamers, myself included, are starting to tire of games that say hundreds of hours of content. Luckily, RoboCop Rogue City features a new Game Plus mode, which I actually find really surprising for a AA title like this. This is anecdotal, but a lot of shorter games that I see don't have as much of a replayability factor as others, but I think it works really well here with the way the game is designed. In just one playthrough of the campaign, I was unable to unlock every single skill point, so if you want to see everything that the game has to offer, you basically have to play New Game Plus. And you do unlock some pretty cool abilities. And then just to share a few of my personal thoughts on things I'd like to see improved for the next game, again, keeping in mind that not only is it not a fully priced AAA game, I also wouldn't fault the studio for none of these features making it into the game, especially considering that at the time of recording, the release of Rogue City Unfinished Business is just weeks away. That being said, I would love to see more robust enemy AI. This game is meant to make you feel like a walking tank, but that doesn't mean the enemies should just like run up to you willy-nilly. You'd think they'd run farther away when they saw this walking, talking death machine coming at you, but a lot of them just waltz right in front of the RoboCop, which makes great for chaotic fights and funny clips, but I would love to see them be at least a little bit more realistically reactive. Like, you will literally shoot the buddy's top part of their head off, and then the next guard who is standing right next to him just runs at you with their gun down. It's a little silly. If they could also provide a pathfinder, that would be great. A lot of environments in Rogue City are samey looking, and it can be easy to get lost. The precinct actually is so confusing at first because it's not laid out like a video game hub, it's laid out like an actual building, which is both cool and frustrating, but I digress. These are two small changes that I feel would have a pretty big impact, in my opinion, but only time would tell. But that's going to do it for this video. Thank you so much for watching, and I hope you enjoyed it. If you did enjoy it or find it informative, please hit that like button, subscribe, and ring the bell to get allegedly instant notifications on when the next video drops. And comment down below your thoughts on RoboCop Rogue City. Are you excited for the follow-up? Have you tried Rogue City for yourself? Sound off down in the comments. Let's chat. But as always, this is Ambro, keeping you plugged into the games that matter. Peace out.